We are officially underway. Is it official, or are we going to change our mind in about a week?
No, we're official. Let's
Okay,
let's
we're
rock and roll.
we're rocking and rolling with the Clutch Culture Podcast, which has been already in just 1 week renowned as the best podcast that has started in the last 10 days. So there we go.
We're
Cheers to
getting a lot of
us.
shout outs. A lot of shout outs.
100%. Yeah, we're gonna start doing like the old radio DJ guys. Like, I want to shout out to dun, dun, dun." Shout out and just name a list of people. Shout out to the guy I saw at SEMA who shook my hand and said, "I love your podcast."
Exactly right.
So you're actually just coming back from SEMA, and I got a slew of things. Like, I don't know about you, but I try to carve out time throughout the day to just keep up with a couple of things like news, music, cars, and then what's kind of going on in like the market, I guess you can call it as a whole.
Sure.
So, when we're doing the podcast, I try to add a little extra time to what's going on in the car world. And I got a slew of things, but I want to toss it to you first. Is there anything that's at the top of your mind since you just recently did the whole SEMA thing?
I got to tell you, man. I think here's one of the things that people SEMA's changed. I think it's less attended. They're allowing a lot more companies in, right? So they're allowing a lot more companies to be a part of all of this from all different walks of life. And for people that haven't been there, which is probably most people listening to us, I mean, it's still a great time, right? It's still the place to be if you can get in the door. It's a great car show, car expo, auto afterpart expo type of thing. But I think they're struggling to find an identity right now. And I think what comes to my mind is what's the evolution going to be? Because the evolution isn't here yet. They just keep trying to trot out the same thing they've been doing for 10, 15 years, and the world's changed, right? I mean, even if guys listening to this, the auto influencer now is mainly YouTube. You rewind the clock 7 years ago, it was who's on Motor Trend, who's on Car and Driver, Road and Track, who's got a TV show on Discovery. That is largely out of the show, right? But they haven't really got the engagement from the YouTube car influencer either. So I think they're just in an in-between place right now, which is, I think, probably pretty interesting to me, but maybe not so interesting to everybody else.
Do you think, because when you were younger, do you remember being like, before you were in business and before you were in the automotive
Yeah.
world, where you were like, I can't wait to go to my first SEMA?
Yeah. SEMA was it, right? I mean, for those of us that work on cars, mechanic, body shop, aftermarket parts, wheels and tires, doesn't matter what part of the aftermarket, so to speak, that you're in, SEMA was the thing. There was no other thing to do,
Do you
right? I
think
mean,
that
you had your
people are
local
doing that
car
now?
show and stuff, but,
Yeah, cars and coffee. But do you think young kids are like, they're talking about that? I can't wait to go to SEMA?
no, I don't
No,
think
right?
so. I think
Yeah.
that's the big problem. The big problem is that SEMA has not been able to bridge the gap to social media and the influencer that's come from that. Like, again, we're all huge fans of guys like, or I should say my age group. Chip Foose was a big deal, right? And he's still signing at SEMA as like that was probably the biggest signing I saw. And it's like, okay, man, the hot rod scene, okay, man, but where's JDM? Where's
Right.
Overlander and all the people that blow up on social media on the Overlander market? That's not my market, but I can tell you this: there's a hall called the West Hall in SEMA, and Overlander used to have a third of that hall. They're now looking at having 2/3 of that hall. But where's all the social media YouTubers and whatever that are massive in that world? They're non-existent.
For the overlanding world?
Yeah, I mean they weren't in that. I mean, it wasn't like that. That's the quietest hall, just
Oh,
so
okay,
everybody
okay.
knows.
Gotcha.
Okay, it's not the most energetic. It's not the most loud. Whatever. So when you think about this, what I'm saying is, what used to bring energy to the SEMA show is you had all these big stars, right? The Jesse James of the world would sign at this welding booth and this booth and that booth, and he'd sign at 4 or 5 booths during SEMA. I'm not sure he was even at SEMA, right? And
Mm.
even if he was at SEMA, would he still bring the crowd that a Doug DeMuro, a Hoovy, a Freddie, Stance Works, M539, you know what I mean?
A
Whatever
Nick
that
from
is.
Culture, Culture Podcast.
Yeah,
Let's
I mean, I
Culture.
was there. I mean,
Nick,
Robert, people were stopping me all the time, like, hey, love the Clutch Culture Podcast and, love what you guys are doing, even though we hadn't launched yet. I mean, They just couldn't hold back, right? And then you look at this, man, and I don't know what's going to happen. It's a business expo, so it's always going to survive, and people are always going to connect. But they're not engaged with those people with millions of subscribers on YouTube. It's just not a big deal.
Yeah, I like looking at everything from the perspective of who's putting on the show, like who's putting the dollars behind it, right? Who's looking to benefit the most from having dollars spent at the show for the show, and then after the show. Like if you go look at tools, you go look at manufacturers, companies, whatever. At the end of the day, someone is looking at a profit and loss sheet, or just at their marketing budget and saying like, where did we see our return from this? Not to you take away from being an enthusiast and just liking the thing, like you said, existing, happening, and bringing people together, for that common those common interests, but most things that I kind of look at like that, inevitably, and by no means am I saying that this is dying anytime soon, but a lot of things in that world, when they don't have a return, don't even have interest, don't have the buzz, they end up kind of like quiet dying, meaning
Yes,
that
that's where
just
we're at
enough
now.
people go to like make it still a thing, but they don't
100%.
go to the point where it's like an explosion.
Dude, it's 100% right. Like it's that's where it's at now. It's in the middle ground, right? It's not dying and dead. It's not growing and flourishing, and it's like purgatory, right?
Yeah.
It's just in the it's just existing, and I think that's okay too, right? If that's what the show becomes. I mean, I'll give people this, you go back to when you had Ken Block and the Hoonigans all over SEMA. That's non-existent.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a little booth, a little Nitro Circus, Hoonigan little area, but all the drifting was happening from Shell. Shell sponsored the drifting area. That's unheard of when Ford and the Hoonigan connection was going on. That area was 2, 3, 5x the size. They were tapping into the internet growth of Hoonigan and Ford and that partnership. And then that all kind of went, blew up essentially right after COVID. Ford backed out. Hoonigan wasn't, obviously going to be taken along. I think they even severed ties with Ford somewhere during that time, somewhere in
Right.
COVID. And the show evolved. And now the big sponsor is Toyota. Well, we know Toyota's not going to pay for a Hoonigan, they're not going to, that's not the type of company they are. They're going to display all their cars in the middle of SEMA, and they're going to have this massive stage, but they're not going to spend on environment and inviting big names. And so you kind of just took a lot of companies, took their money out, COVID and after, and it just changed the show. And also during COVID and after, YouTube influencers became as big as they've ever been.
Yeah.
Right? People were sitting at home.
So speaking of, because nobody gets free shout outs here unless we really like them. So without giving names, channels, or any specifics, do you find yourself either following, like you literally follow them, or there's some people that, I don't know if everybody does this, but like you'll just kind of copy their profile link into your notes, and then you'll just kind of go check up on what they're doing from time to time?
No, we don't do that over here. Somebody
You don't do that? Oh, okay.
email in at Robert at Clutch Culture Podcast and make fun of them. No, we don't do that.
Sometimes you're trying to be Kevin Durant, and I don't have a full burner account, but I'm just going to follow you without following you. I'll do that.
No,
Guilty as charged.
I'm a big hey, if I like you, I'm going to subscribe. I'm
Yeah.
going to subscribe.
But for me, there's a waiting period where I'm going to see if I'm actually going to give you that follow, and then you see that I followed you, even if they have like
that's
thousands of people.
cutthroat. Hey, if
That is
you put
very
out a couple
cutthroat.
good videos, man, I like you, but I will unfollow you. I will
As quick as you
unsubscribe.
followed, right? As quick as you followed.
Yeah,
Okay, so
because I followed. My move is I'm going to give you the subscription after a couple videos that I liked, and then if the content doesn't hit, I got to take you off.
You're dipping.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so are there any of these people, again, without naming names, were they're in the younger demographic of the up and coming or have made a splash in the influencer world, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, whatever, TikTok, and you like what they're doing, and you know that they're like significantly younger than probably both of us?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, there's
Yeah?
no doubt. I think there's a ton of people that I respect and guys that have great channels and
What
do
kind of
great
stuff are they
things.
doing? What kind of stuff are they doing that you
Well,
think
look,
is
I
resonating?
like some of the guys that review cars, right? Because they do it in their way. I can't stand the constant reviewing of hypercars because I got news for you. They're fast.
Yeah.
I got news for you. They're expensive. I got news for you. Everyone there is being bought off because they want to go to the next launch. So
No, they would
that's
never
how-
do that.
that's how the
that.
game works. I mean, this is the part we could get into. I don't follow those kind of people who are getting all the press cars because if we just look at it openly, if you want to go to the next launch in Morocco, the next launch in Europe, if you want to, go and be invited, which by the way, either your company or that company's picking up all your incidentals, I don't feel that I'm getting an impartial review of the car because I know cars that I've driven and I'm not by any means the most expert driver, although I've spent some days on the track, et cetera. And I go, that guy either doesn't know what he's talking about or he completely lied in the review of the car. And I can't get past that because I do have some of the behind the scenes information, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we're here. That's what I bring to this is I
Right.
do have some of that information, and you do as well. For those that don't know, you've worked with a lot of people in the auto space, and there's things that you've seen and I've seen, and I go, hey man, if you're just going to make a YouTube video, constantly tell me that this new hypercar is great or that it's even good when we know it's maybe not. Like we can have this conversation now about the Porsche, the
Okay.
GT3.
Let's do it.
Okay, guys, they've been lucky to get 3 to 5% improvement. I think they're in the 10th year of the same exact baseline engine. I think it's 10 years. They didn't get 150% better over those 10 years. They got little 1, 2, 3% increments. In some cases, the cars are worse to drive around, depending on the generation, just your city. Now you look at the price increase. Okay, and you go, okay, they're going to go out there and try to get $350,000 for these things. Well, it's a $200,000 car, right? Where's anybody saying that? Well, they love Porsche, so they want to kiss up to Porsche, and they want to get the new Porsche that comes out, and they want to get the Macan, and they want to get the Cayenne, and they want to get the Taycan, and they want to get all of these things. But if we're all being honest, you go, hey man, I like the GT3. It's an awesome car. I love Porsche's quality. An honest review of it is 10 years in, and we have proof of this, the 350Z from Nissan was on that same platform for over a decade, and everybody hated on it. Now we're on the same platform in the GT3, and everybody can't rave about it enough. Put two and two together. Nissan's not going to send you to Monaco, but Porsche will.
Coming from right here, I got one right there on the fucking shelf behind me.
Yeah.
I'm on that. I can agree with you, but also like, not a lie was just told. So when you watch these people online or younger people watching them online, because I think the Porsche, especially the 911, has become what for me it originally was the Lambo. It was the Countach, or it was early Lambos, maybe Ferraris, but really it was like Lambo magazine poster toys. Like that's what I wanted. Now it's kind of like, unfortunately, it's so weird to say out loud, but people almost kind of like scoff at like, oh, you got a Lambo, bro? You need the GT3 RS, or GT2.
And by the way, I'll say this: walk SEMA, Lambo and McLaren, Lambo and McLaren, Lambo and McLaren. I mean, it's so unoriginal now.
Right.
The coolest thing that I saw at SEMA was a Safari G-Wagon. Like that was the coolest thing that I saw. Right?
The coolest thing I
Period.
saw
Point
online
blank
was
in a story.
I think a Buick. I think it was a Buick. I'm pretty sure a Grand National or one of those variations.
Oh yeah. Grand National is that was very well done. Very
So
well
cool.
done.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. A Grand National, I can appreciate the craftsmanship, but it wasn't necessarily like cool. Right? I just go, hey, these dudes really know what they're doing. This is awesome. Glad they did it. When I look at a Safari G-Wagon, I go, I don't see those hardly ever. I mean, Porsche and Lambo, we've taken some deliveries of the Lambo that I look at it and go, they're building Safari cars in-house. But to see like a chop top, they put a bed in it. They did it. It was all high quality work on this G-Wagon Safari with some HRE wheels on it that would look ugly on every other car except this one, the way that they did it. You go, this thing's unique, right? And so, when we have these conversations, I'm kind of like with you, man. When you start thinking about, Macan at 70,000, I mean, if you drove in one of those, they're not that great. Okay. If you talk about Cayenne, we just took delivery for a customer. I think it was $196,000 for a Cayenne, the one that you would want.
Yeah.
Porsche's getting to the place where you go, okay, man, how many people are going to speak up and say this stuff's getting out of hand? And you basically look at, nobody ever talks about the base 911 turbo anymore. Nobody talks about it. I mean, that was one of the great cars when we were growing up. I mean, that's what you wanted to own. And so when you look at it, when we get back to the YouTubers and the people like that, I'm very particular. That's why I like certain channels, but those guys are much younger than me, and I respect the hell out of what they're doing. And there's a lot of these guys I like, so I don't want you and I should never want to act like, dude, we love a lot of car
Oh yeah.
creators.
Oh yeah.
If all you're doing is reviewing cars and you're doing it on the company's dime of the car company you're, reviewing, I think you got to put some skepticism in there.
100%. And there's this one kid who not recently, it's probably been about 6 months now. But I started going back through his videos. And again, without naming names, no free shout outs on the Clutch Culture podcast. He started off with like an old Toyota, like a beater car that was his daily. And then he had an Audi, I think maybe an S4, something like that. And then he progressed into like M3, one of the newer Supras. He got
Yep.
a Z06. Now he's got a Lambo. You might even know who I'm talking about if you've seen this kid on Instagram. But like, I started following him when he had 30,000 followers. He's at like, I think almost a quarter or 500,000, something like that. And all he's doing is being like a 23 or 24-year-old kid who had, and this is all, yeah, obviously you have to take what they say with a grain of salt. So I don't know. He had 3 jobs. He might even still have 2 or 3 jobs. He found a way to monetize his platforms, meaning all the socials, and put all that together and said, I'm going to go all in on making fun, almost kind of like family-friendly car content too.
I think it's
And
awesome.
you just want to see what's this kid doing next. At the beginning
Yep.
of this year, he made like a vision board where he wrote the goals for the year, and he crossed them all out. He got the BMW, he got the Supra, he got the Corvette, now the
Well, he
Lambo.
got 2 BMWs if he bought the Supra, but yeah. So
I was waiting for you to say.
he bought multiple BMWs.
He did. He did.
Here's what I'll say. There's a definition out of SEMA that I started to say to people that I'll say here that is exactly the clutch culture mindset coming from my angle.
All right.
If you're doing cool shit, I'm in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be things that I think are cool, but you get me interested in them.
Yeah.
Like you're not looking and going, hey, I wanted to wake up and follow this kid who was buying his, this car and this car and this car. But you know what? He's doing it his way. It's cool for him, and I'm going to follow along. That's my requisite. Okay. Mm-hmm. When you're doing stuff that I read in Motor Trend 25 years ago, that's not cool shit to me. Like, you and I have had this discussion. I'll let everybody in on the discussion. Performance car of the year. Every car's fast. Every car handles decently. Come on, man. Let's move on. Okay? 0 to 60 times. Let's move on. Okay? That stuff's been solved. When you have electric cars that I can go buy in an instant and go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, why are we talking about it anymore? We solved it. It's all good, man. Like, it's time to move on and do something else cool.
Okay, perfect segue. What do you think some of these manufacturers should do in order to like do something cool that's also different that isn't going to be $400,000, $500,000? What and I'm talking about the Mercedes of the world, the Ferrari of the world. What do you think they should do?
Well,
with
look,
their cars?
What we think as enthusiasts and what they're going to do to make money is 2 different things.
Yeah.
I think any good car company, look, I own an E90 M3 BMW. The saddest part about BMW to me is that they could have just kept the motorsport brand very, very exclusive. AMG is in the same boat, okay? But they had to monetize it. So now the question is, can you take these exclusive badges and bring back the specialness of them? 911 Turbo. That turbo, that meant something. Mm-hmm. For those that didn't go through that era, 911 and then having a turbo on the back, that meant something. And so instead of saying they're going to overhaul everything, first of all, I think they would help their development to have these specialty programs where they built enthusiast cars, because I think it would leak into building the everyday car and make those cars better. Think about something like push button start. Push button start was F1 to the elite hypercar. Now it's on a Nissan Rogue, right? That's kind of how development happens. And so when you look at AMG, when you look at the M cars, when you look at Turbo and the Porsche brand, I think it'd be kind of okay to just say we're going to make those special again, and I think they'd sell like hotcakes. I mean, I know they can't sell that throughout their brand, okay? So understand that I know they need to make money, but I think they can if the first brand to niche out something that was truly always for the enthusiast and they carried it on for the next 20 years, I think it'd be a cash cow. And I think you can do a lot of this stuff for 65,000 to 120,000 and still build something that's extremely fun. But you got to get people to stop looking at the horsepower number, and you got to realize 500 horsepower, if you know how to drive, is a lot of horsepower.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. So Mercedes is one of the brands that I actually don't know a whole lot of their lineup by memory. You know, like
You
ironically,
just know when you
actually,
see it.
for sure, right? Yeah, but actually, funny enough, I worked for Mercedes in a finance department when I was younger, and it was cool because,
No
well,
cars got financed that whole month.
yeah, exactly. It's better to just call it a titling department, basically.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
$100.
I was early 20s. I was in charge of getting the plates basically for all these people, and a lot of
Yeah,
them
it's awesome.
very similar demographics, if you know what I'm saying, of who was buying these cars.
Oh yeah.
A lot of business owners also of the same demographic that were getting these cars, and I'd get to go back and forth around the city, around Houston, like going to the different what do you call them? Where you get your tags and shit, your plates and whatnot.
DMV. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or DMV or whatever they are. And I'd always be able to just, go pick a set of keys and just take whatever to go get the plates for another car. And so I got to drive a ton of them. This is now almost 10, 12 years ago. And they're great. And no knock on them, but none of them really for whatever reason, they didn't replace the Porsche in my brain. They didn't replace like an upper Audi for me. And I don't know what it was, but as we're talking, I saw that Car and Driver posted a new 2025. Maybe you know the lineup better, an AMG GT43. So for 2025, that's significantly less expensive, and they've abandoned the all-wheel drive, going rear-wheel drive. And I'm like, oh, this sounds kind of like a step in that direction.
Yeah, I think. Look, Mercedes is a good example of the EQS was a disaster, which was their electric platform. I mean, you could have leased those things for $200 and a bag of oranges at some point in 2024 here. I mean, it was a complete and utter
Is that
disaster for the
bad?
brand. Oh, dude. I mean, the calls I would get, I got two customers that ended up getting them. They love them. These also are people that they could drive it off a cliff and not miss it, but they do like them.
Okay.
And when you look at it from my angle, if you go back and you look at all the old AMGs that are catching fire price wise, right? Hammers, things like that. You look at all those cars that are catching fire, they're going for massive money now. There is a desire for you to build vehicles, number one, that in the moment are kind of affordable, right? But you still have some get up and go. You do have some tech in the suspension, but there's this big philosophy in car brands that you wouldn't want just a middle of the road, very, very nice AMG. Well, that's BS. What I don't want is the piece of crap C300 AMG. Okay, I don't want that car.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that car. Okay, what you want as somebody that understands cars is, okay, man, I can't buy the $250,000 AMG, but you know what? I will stretch if you put me in that 80 to 120,000. That's new money, by the way.
Yep.
The money as it is today. But just give me something decent. This is what I think the NSX biggest mistake with NSX was.
Yep.
NSX was never a $200,000 car. It was never a $150,000 car because the best NSX they ever built, I could have picked them up for $40,000 up until COVID, basically. Right? So you tell me that I look online as an enthusiast, and the NSX's a great example was 50 grand, and then you're going to relaunch the NSX and it's going to be $195,000. Well, wait a minute, man. Honda, you got it wrong somewhere. As we know, they've gotten a lot wrong with the Acura brand. But
Yeah.
that's my point, is that I think most people listening to this are like, hey, in new money, you get me something pretty cool at 80 grand, I'm going to buy it. But you got to put some effort into it. You can't just ask me for 80 grand to buy an F-150, right? You can't do that.
So funny you say that price range just falls right where this new car or this
Yep.
new 25 model is going to fall.
By the way, I hadn't
107,000.
even looked in the article you were saying. This is off
Yeah,
the top of my head, so it's good to
dude.
know that I'm pretty close.
Way to pat yourself on the back without
I know,
having
that's
to
what I'm
say
saying. Hey,
I'm
Clutch
patting myself
Culture,
on the back.
send email to Robert for interrupting me while I was.
It's right here. It's right there. I don't need to look at it.
He is an Astros fan. They're all about cutting corners and taking edges. You know how we go.
Wow. Wow, that deserves a pausing of your microphone and your camera. I'm gonna actually
Hey, so everybody knows my family has season tickets to the Astros. So I don't live there, but we are supporters of the Houston Astros.
goddamn right you better say that. All right, here we go. I want to bring you up on this. So 2025 Mercedes-AMG GT43 has 416 horsepower, a turbo 4, which we can talk about that. Rear-wheel drive, abandons the all-wheel drive, and starts at 107, which, for context, is, as it says in the article, 73,000 less than the GT63 and
Yep.
32K less than the GT55.
So you've actually seen the GT63 because you edited some videos that I've done,
That's
and
awesome.
that's an awesome car.
Love it.
Here's the mistake with this car right off the get. That four cylinder is going to be a hard sell.
Yeah, yeah.
They're already seeing that inside the Mercedes family. You're seeing it inside other families. I get it, man. It produces the horsepower. That's what everybody always says. If you go to comment sections where people review these types of cars, they'll be like, well, it's the same horsepower. Who cares? It's a four cylinder. The consumer does care. I mean, the consumer does care of these types of cars. So the question is, will this eventually go to where they understand we're going to go back to a V6, V8 world, make them highly more efficient? I doubt that happens. But when you look at it, their big uphill climb is getting somebody like me to spend $110,000 on a four cylinder. I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to be a very difficult sell.
So this is also a perfect segue into also the day we're recording this. Motor Trend dropped their V8 documentary. Have you seen it?
I have not.
Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, cool. So I'm about halfway through it, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. So it's called V8, the Engine of America. It's on Motor Trend's YouTube channel, and I don't know if this is something that was behind a paywall previously, or if it's a new piece of content they just recently created. But it just went up last night, and they dropped like another trailer for it today, the day we're recording this. And I think it's awesome, and you segued into it perfectly. Where the turbo sixes, the turbo fours, even if you're lucky to still get a naturally aspirated six, like depending what car you're buying, can be awesome.
Yep.
But especially when we're talking about AMGs or anything in that upper echelon, people want a V8.
Yes. No questions asked. I mean, and again, I'll tell you my exact situation. I have had a chance to buy tons of cars. When I saw a good deal on an E90 M3, one of the reasons I pulled the trigger, manual transmission and a V8, right? I mean, that's why you pull the trigger. Look at the Blackwing, the CT5V Blackwing from Cadillac. Probably many could argue that whenever they disband that, it's supposed to be a one-time thing, but it looks like they're redoing it again, or they're doing it again. And those were regularly, had a premium on them for a very long time because why? Manual transmission was available and a V8 was available, right? So this is where you get into, and a lot of people don't want to hear this, and the people that follow us definitely don't want to hear it. This is what happens when bean counters run the company, right? You've lost a lot of the enthusiasm around car brands over generations now, that these guys have no connection to anything other than, are we making the most money on every car that we can make? Okay. And we all understand it's a business, but a lot of things that made AMGs great, M's great, turbos great, all that stuff is coming out of the system now, and it's all bean counters running these companies. And you got a lot of fired up engineers that want to build cool stuff. They're just being told they can't build it. Right? It's not fiscally responsible to build it. We have EPA regulations, EU regulations, all these other different things. But the uphill battle probably for the next 5 to 10 years is, how do you transition the mindset of the biggest cultures out there that a four cylinder is okay, and that's going to take time. And that's going to take a lot of money being lost, by the way.
For sure, which I don't think ever reaches the heights of what a V8 is and was in people's minds, but they can work towards it. I think the pendulum is going to swing the other way. Little wink to our clutch culture listeners. I think America's going to see a lot of V8s, a lot of cool things being built in the next 5 to 10 years. That's just my opinion. And I think that it's going to start with things like, for instance, halfway through this doc, somebody, I forgot, it might have been from one of the Hot Rod shows on Motor Trend, were mentioning that the new EV chargers have it to where you can just bolt up a V8 and a rear-wheel drive configuration right there. Just take the battery packs out. You can bolt in a V8. And they were saying that's by design. They could have obviously made it to where that wasn't a possibility, but They did, and I think that speaks into what is probably going to shift in the next cycle of those cars.
Yeah, I mean, and you also have to realize something. A lot of billions of dollars are already down the drain, and there's a lot of heads rolling inside of companies going, you went all in on this. And remember, the shareholder is different than the people that operate the company. The shareholder is saying, why are our cars not selling? And that's the EV reality. Okay. And as you go up into 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder, do you know what they see? Our 8 cylinders always sell.
Hmm.
They always sell. Okay. As we try to take the 8-cylinder and make it a 4-cylinder, it's sitting on the car lot. So now the shareholder, doesn't matter what the company's saying about the EPA, they go, we're not making money on those 4-cylinders. Why are you building them? Right? So this is the Ford conundrum. The Ford conundrum was, pardon me, the Ford conundrum is EVs aren't selling. The CEO comes out and says, yeah, we can't build them and make money on them. And so they went to the F-250 plant and said, here's $1 billion, build us more F-250s, right? So I'm with you that the pendulum, we have to find the equilibrium.
Hmm.
That's what we're looking for right now in these car brands. And as enthusiasts, as people that are fired up about cars, or people that nerd out about the business and the car itself, you look at it and you go, something's going to get to a breaking point. And maybe what they do is they have electric models and then they have V6, V8 models. Maybe the V4 is the future. All of those things could be the possibility. We just don't know right now because we're looking for equilibrium across all these brands.
Yeah, and Bravo. Speaking of Ford, so Jim Farley's in that up to halfway through that doc. He's in there quite a bit, talking about his younger days. You know, building his first car, driving across country, the whole story. If people are unfamiliar with it, it's interesting. But also like their 2025 model F-150, the single cab, you can only get it in a 5.0, which I think is great. Like a lot of dealerships, especially here in Texas, and I know this probably isn't Nick's thing. I personally still like it because I'm a child at heart, but I want the modern day Lightning. Damn it, I want the modern day Lightning, and
Oh,
a lot of these
100%.
and a
100%.
lot of these dealerships are making it to where, and give me your opinion on this. So instead of going out and building your own, like getting a single cab, short bed, building it out with a custom builder, you go to one of these dealerships. They can just, do the install. You're going to pay through the nose for it, but they'll put the
Sure.
Roush charger on top and they do the whole setup, suspension, I think, as well. Interior, it comes with the, I think, Lariat infotainment. So you get the really nice screen. There's no other option. They're really making
Yeah.
it enthusiast friendly. Again, you're going to pay quite a bit for it, but I think that's a great direction.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you have it in the ecosystem, guys like you and I are going to be happy they have it in the ecosystem,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's worth it, and we'll have a lot of listeners that go, "I'll just do it myself." Cool, man. But there's also a lot of guys that go, "Hey, man, I'm just into it. I want to buy it. I'll pay whatever." Yeah, I know I'm paying a $35,000 premium when I could probably do it for 17 on my own. Yeah, I think I look at all of this and I go, I'm always going to cheer that on. One of
Yeah.
the things people may not know about me is I cheer on the CEO of Ferrari because he's a wild man. I mean, this dude just says whatever, right? I mean, he doesn't care, and we don't have that in most corporate culture now, right? So one of the things that's been nice about him, although Ford runs a very, very, very poor business on the input side of their cost, he just comes out and says, yeah, we got to fix it, but that's been going on for 100 years, right? He's just that guy. He just goes, look, I know it's a problem, but I can't fix it overnight. When the EVs became a problem inside their brand and they can't sell them, i.e. the electric Lightning, he's like, yeah, we can't make money doing this. We got to diversify. And they were building a massive plant, I believe, in Tennessee that's like sitting there idle. And he's just like, F this, I can't make this work. We need to retool and go back and spend more money on our stuff that is selling. And one thing about the American market that's a lot different than the rest of the world, we like bigger trucks, we like bigger SUVs, we like bigger cars, we like bigger whatever. And so he's exactly right, is that's going to come along with some models that have to be a V8 or something of that ilk. And I like it.
Do you think Ford should bring back more cars?
Well, they can't because people aren't buying cars. But you and I have had this discussion many times. The reason people aren't buying cars, in my opinion, is because they're priced wrong, they're marketed wrong, and they're built to a lower quality while asking a premium price. I mean, if you ask Toyota, they can sell Prius, they can sell Corolla, they can sell the Camry. Okay, they sell those like crazy. Ford abandoning the Ford Taurus was one of the biggest questionable decisions in the history of cars, right? I mean, because just what they sold corporately was worth crazy amounts of money that people would have continued. The Crown Vic to the police stations and all these different things that existed in their pipeline. I get it, man. I get the argument against cars. People probably need to know this. I'm a big sedan guy. I think the sedan is still the most underrated experience. I think a lot of people go and buy these mid-sized SUVs. I think a lot of them are horrible experiences. So I'm probably the wrong guy to ask because I think a lot of people should own a sedan.
I don't, and I don't know what it is either. Maybe, how about you? Like, why do you think you love the sedan just as a whole? Is it the
One
practicality? This, you know what I mean? Is it the sports?
one I grew up when Lexus LS, was launched,
Hmm.
which is one of the best sedans ever built. You go
Hmm.
back and you look at that like 2002 to 2006 LS 430, probably one of the best sedans ever built. S Class meant something. BMW 7 Series meant something. But here's the other thing. They charged a premium price for sedans like those for a long time now, and they didn't deliver.
Yeah.
BMW 7 Series was always way behind the S Class for a long time. They may have caught up in this new iteration, by the way. The new 7 Series is probably better than the S Class, but I think so many things were subpar and they were too expensive, right? As you had all of these other offerings, I remember an S63 AMG we bought for a customer. This is a long time ago. Fully spec'd out, I think she paid $160,000 for it.
Wow.
You don't have that many sedan buyers. I mean, again, you can go into Bentley, you can go into Rolls Royce. They don't sell that many cars, compared to the market, right? So they can make it work because it's specialized. But even Bentley's like, we just we'd rather sell the Continental GT than the bigger sedan. So I think what people have to realize is I just love them because I think the ride is better. I think the driving experience is better. I think it's more nimble when you know how to handle it. I just always think that it's, look, Tesla Model S proved that it still works. Let's be
Hmm.
clear. You know, it's just these brands abandon it. I think that's the facts.
All right. So we're coming on the end of our what we're trying to commit to our time wise, so we don't make people have to pause. Some people hate pausing and then having to come back. I know people that
Yeah.
refuse to. They want to finish it right then and there. So we're trying to make it to where. Are you?
When I was at SEMA, I had somebody say that to me directly.
No way.
100% out of the blue. Weren't even talking about podcasting. He said something to me and he said he was listening to something. He goes, but it's about 35 minutes to work. And, it was
Yeah.
42 minutes and I didn't really want to hit play on it.
Crazy people. But hey, we love you. Hope you
Exactly.
we love you. Hope you like it. Leave a subscription. Leave a what do you say? What do the people say these days? Give me a
Like and
comment.
subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Leave a comment. 5-star only. If not, kick rocks. But before we go, you might know this. I either forgot about this chain of stores or what. But Come and Go. Are you familiar with Come and Go's?
Buddy, I own a
It's in
company
the
that's
Midwest.
in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Let me tell you, sad day when Come and Go, spelled KUM and Go, has been bought by Maverick and been a big
Yeah.
topic of conversation now for a little while.
Has it? It was news to me, and I just had to include it because I forgot that when Knoxville wore their shirt on one of the jackasses, it became like a whole thing.
Yep.
And I don't think I'd heard the name until here this last week when I found out about this. So what's the deal? Like this is a big chain in the Midwest, isn't it?
Yeah, and they got bought out by a company. I think it is Maverick out of Utah or something like that.
I was reading it. It didn't say, but I was trying to find out more about
So we
who
have,
acquired it.
I'm for everybody listening. I'm in Las Vegas. We have Mavericks here. They started popping up the last 5 years. Looks like they're just, got plenty of equity and they're just buying out regional chains and kind of throwing their name on them.
Gotcha. Of
I'm sure you're a Bucky's guy, where
course,
you
yeah.
live.
Hmm.
But you have a lot of these chains throughout the Midwest, the Northeast, the Southeast that are regional. That these conglomerates are they're just gonna eat them up, right? And that's what Maverick's doing. That's exactly what they
Okay.
did with the Come and Goes.
What a shame. Like that should have made a
What a name!
resurgence in yeah, what a name. It should have made a resurgence in like Jackass 6 where he wore it again and then people were like,
By
"Oh
the
my
way,
god." It's good."
shout out Marshall, favorite place. Our buddy Marshall, favorite
I'm not
place to
surprised.
get it 100%.
I'm not
Buddy,
surprised.
I've when I'm in Tulsa near our facility and I own a company there and got to tell you they're everywhere and just
What
come
do you
and
say?
go,
Hey,
bud.
let's go fill up at the Come and Go, yeah? Is that
That's it.
Who
That's
says
kind of
that?
how it goes. There's got to be listeners out there like, yeah, man, I love their slushies over there.
I bet you do, sir. I bet you do. All right, man. There's always so much going on in the car world. I love that we can touch on news things, what's trending, what's coming, our opinions on stuff. No pun intended with the story we just mentioned. But if you are listening to this, because we're going to go ahead and drop these, right? Our first two episodes, we're going to start publishing them. If
Yep.
you have any feedback, I guess we need to create an email. Actually, before I even say this, we'll make an email for the podcast so that you can send any kind of request, questions, or just stuff that we can feature on the podcast. Right? Sound like a good idea?
Yeah, if you guys are listening to this, we're not the most organized fellas right here out of the gate with the two. We should have had an email address. We don't. We'll get it right. But yeah, man. I mean, whatever you guys want to talk about, if you guys want to email in, I'm sure we'll have social media platforms up and going, and you can DM us. And look, we're all about having fun with this and giving our opinion and hopefully entertaining everybody, while on their drive, their run, their workout, whatever it is they do. And I think, yeah, send in anything that we can talk about. I'm in.
Fantastic. Well, sir, you have a great rest of your day.
All right, guys.